I left this sample in Sweden when I moved back, so it's still there. So I don't actually have it to show, but you can see the ripples and the partial knit technique that we're going to be using. So the ripples in this sample have been striped and the full rib is just a plain colour. And this is the back where you can see a little bit more of the structure. You can see the full rib and also the ripples. These are the notes that I wrote up when I was there. So this is how I wrote it out. And this is my idea of creating this sort of circle shape. It's not going to be circle, it's going to have some straight sides to it, but that's okay. The more circular we can get it later on, the better. So I'm drawing out on a whiteboard the original sample that I made. I find drawing on a whiteboard really quite easy because you can really plan your techniques and plan what you're going to be doing. If you make a mistake, you can easily rub it out, just like I did there. And it really kind of makes things clear, especially when I'm knitting at the machine. I don't have bits of papers around, I just have one whiteboard sat at my machine that I'm following. So the striped areas, these are the ripple areas, and you can see the direction of the partial knit, so you can see kind of the areas that I'm building up the fabric on, and the white areas are just full knit, full rib, where I have only used one colour and I've only used the polyamide. So this is a little bit of just breaking it down. Approximately 6 rows per ripple, and the polyamide for the full rib will be used to shrink the yarn and just to create kind of a bit of a tighter knit when I'm working. So I decided to kind of draw out another sample. So this one hasn't got the ripples on both sides as the other one did. This one just has ripples building up on one side. And this is just to sort of test ideas and to also then be able to kind of not make such a jump between the original sample and then the circular sample. And that was kind of the idea of thinking that I could just draw up a sample with just the ripples on one side, on the left hand side, with some full rib on the right hand side. I also noticed whilst I was doing this that actually this works out well because I need to be changing colours between the ripples and the full rib because I've got two different yarns and two different colours going on. I can't change colour on the right hand side because I do not have a yarn changer on the right hand side. My yarn changer is only on the left hand side. I use this yarn changer when I'm working with the double bed and working with full rib. So therefore, if I wanted to change colour on the right hand side, it would make it really difficult because I need to drop the ribber bed down, take off the carriage, etc, etc. So it just makes my life a little bit easier to be able to plan this with changing colour on the left. So I've got into planning the piece as a whole now. You can see it's basically split up into segments, which are triangles. So each partial knit triangle is a different segment, and these are just going to be built up around each other to then make this circle shape, which would have all of these ripples, as you can see, and be a bit crazy. There will be not stripes. Well, there will be stripes, but I mean there won't be. There will be straight lines, straight edges, rather than a smooth circular shape. But that is kind of unavoidable for the time being. I start off with a bit of waist. As you can see, I'm kind of now getting a bit behind with my commentary, but never mind. And I have just drawn up two different segments. I've kind of questioned whether to repeat this 6 times. I don't really know how many times to repeat this. I will do it on the machine and see how I go. And these sections are the ripple areas. I've put in different colours here. You can have different colours if you wanted to, but I'm just going to be using the purple for the ripples, and I'll be using a polyamide for the full rib to shrink it. I've decided I'll have about 6 rows per ripple. This depends on the yarn. You might be able to get in more, you might be able to get in less. It totally depends on the yarn that you're using. The full rib rows, they will be with a shrinking yarn just to give it a little bit of help to shrink. And the partial knit, I will think about decreasing 3 stitches every row. I'm not going to wrap, I might need to, but I'll talk about that later on down the line. And with that, it looks like I'm actually ready to go. Let's do a little dance. So let's get to the knitting bit. I do my setup row, which is just 1 row across. On the double bed, I will take up the comb, insert the wire through the comb, and this is where I'm going to hang my weights. So the weights will be used to just hold the knit down in place whilst I'm knitting. I'll do 2 rows of circular knit on quite a low stitch size, and then I will do my final row of full rib, and I will increase the stitch size as well. So this is waist yarn. I'll do a little bit of waist yarn before I then cast on fully with the actual yarn which I'm going to use, which I've done here. And I'm going to go straight into my partial knit and my ripples. So I'm going to bring out 3 needles on the right hand side whilst I only knit on the back bed only. So this is a ripple that I'm creating, and by only knitting on the selected needles and bringing some needles out into hold, I'm starting to shape the knit. So I will also change colour once I've done about 6 rows of the purple, which is the ripple, and once I've changed colour I will then knit some full rib, 2 rows of that, and that is just to kind of to bring the ripple back together and to kind of to close it off. It is a double bed sample, so I do need to work on both beds at some point. And once I have done the 2 full rib rows, which I've also done again, I then bring out 3 needles into the hold position, always on the right hand side because I'm creating more fabric on the left hand side to sort of turn the knit. 6 rows of the ripples, change colour and into the polyamide before I then go again. I've changed camera view so you can kind of see everything from a whole, and you can actually also see my colour changer. So this is an automatic colour changer, and it just means anytime I take the carriage across all the way to the left, I can change colour to a different selected colour. I'm only using 2 colours in this. My previous sample I used 3 where I then swapped colours within the ripples, but I'm not doing that for this one. I just wanted to see if the sample works. And you can also see that I'm working further and further across the needle bed towards the left hand side, bringing needles out into the hold position after each full rib row, and then creating a ripple only with the purple and only on the back bed. I'm holding this knitting down manually. I've taken off the weight because it ended up not being enough weight. When you're working with a full rib and partial knit, you really need to check the weight underneath and really make sure that your weight is enough to hold your stitches down. So I've completed that first section, and I'm now going to reintroduce the needles and bring them back into the working position, the needles that were in the hold or the partial knit position. On the front bed I will rehang the stitches. On the back bed I don't need to, I will just push them back into the working position, but on the front bed I need to rehang them because otherwise if I just push them back like I have just done on the back bed, the carriage is going to assume that I'm trying to force those stitches to knit. That will mean that I will create stitches, and I don't want to do that. I only want to have stitches made with the polyamide on the front bed. I don't want that wool mix going in there at all. That's just to keep it neat, and it could cause some problems. So I will be rehanging 3 stitches at a time on the front bed only, and just making sure they're out of the way of the carriage. On the back bed it really doesn't matter. I'll just push them back. Again, I'm repeating 6 rows with the purple on the back bed, changing to the polyamide and then making a full rib before then reintroducing needles, as you can see here, changing colour to the purple, knitting 6 rows and changing back to polyamide. There will be little holes in this. I'm actually okay with that, and that's just to do with the partial knit and to do with the structure of it, and the fact that I've knitted more rows in one area than another. I'm not wrapping a needle. That is a method that you can do to kind of get rid of these holes, and I'll show you those holes at the end. But I'm fine with that. It's something that I was thinking about whether I should wrap the needles or not as I was bringing the needles out into the holes and also reintroducing them again. I just decided not to for this sample. And that was just a personal decision. Maybe I was being lazy. But I continue to work all the way back across the needle bed, reintroducing the needles as I go, changing colour and striping both between the polyamide and also the purple. I think the purple is made up of wool. It's mainly a wool mix. It doesn't really matter what yarn you use for the purple. It was just kind of texture that I was looking for. So I do a couple of rows of the polyamide for all of the needles, and then I literally just go back and repeat the process by bringing needles out on the right hand side into the hold position and swapping yarns and changing over all over again and repeating that whole sort of shaping process. So the more that fabric I build up on the left hand side, the more the knit will then turn. And when I mean turn, I mean it kind of, you're building it up, so it's just going to shift round. The the right hand side of the knit will stay towards the machine and towards the needle bed, whereas the left hand side is becoming longer and longer because I'm making more and more rows. So it will naturally turn, and I want to do a full circle of this. I'm guessing with this, it's going to be about 6 repeats of bringing needles out into hold position and then reintroducing them. I'm not so sure. It could be more, it could be less. This is a trial for me, so I will probably change it if I were to knit another one. But you can also see that I'm turning off the front bed whenever I have that purple, just to make sure that I'm only knitting on the back bed, because I don't want to knit on the front bed to create a ripple. Changing colour, reintroducing the front bed, and taking the polyamide across. The use of the polyamide is also to shrink a little bit, because I want to really kind of give this a bit of a dense material, which is what you can see in the original sample. If I were to use the wool, the purple wool for the full rib, just due to the nature of these knitting machines, the full rib on these, it's not so neat, it's not so tight, and it is quite loose. So that's why I wanted to use the polyamide, just to be able to shrink it up a little bit and kind of create a bit of a tighter knit. So I repeated everything 6 times, it seems, and I'm now going to cast off. So I'm transferring all of my front bed needles to the back bed, as you can see here. This is just the way that you cast off with a double bed, without trying to knock the camera. And this is just so I can do 1 row with just the back bed needles in the polyamide, and that's just to get an even row of stitches that I can then cast off. So I've dropped the bed down. You can see that I've been building up more fabric on the left than the right, so it's kind of turned around. And for this I am going to do a latch tool bind off. So I'm using the latch tool rather than transferring stitches with the transfer tool. This is just my new preferred method of casting off now. There's many different ways that you can cast off. It's one that I've just become a little bit quicker at. I mean, this is sped up, of course, but I find it's a little bit more comfortable. It saves a little bit of time, which is why it's my preferred method. So yeah, I'm just going to finish casting off, but you can see that the sample that I have made has turned around, and hopefully will create a bit of a circle shape. I know that there are some straight edges that you can certainly see on the left hand side, but we can deal with those and we can look into them if needed, and we can adjust the pattern. As I said, this is just a sample to begin with, it's nothing final. I'm just seeing what will happen when I repeat it over and over. So I can try and cut my yarn. Apparently I've got some very blunt scissors. Maybe I need to get some, replace them. I will take the weights off, so I've just got a couple of claw weights on there just to help keep everything down away from the needles. I was using my hands manually as the weights, but I obviously changed to some claw weights just to help here and there. So I'll take those off, and then I can remove the fabric from the machine. And here we go. So it's looking kind of more like a starfish than a circle. So you can see this front side, which is just full of ripples, and the back side where you can see a lot more of the structure from the polyamide, which has been shrunk down because I've steamed this. I have knitted maybe a repeat too many, so if I wanted this to lie flat, I'd probably only need 5 repeats for this particular pattern. And the straight edges as well, so they're to do with the partial knit. If I wanted to get rid of those, I'd increase the number of needles I put into partial knit rather than 3. But I think the interesting thing about this is that there is a bit of dimension to it. So maybe if I repeated the sections 12 times, then maybe I could get a piece out that maybe looks like this. This is all naturally standing, so there's it's just doing this on its own, and it's really, really fun, I think. And here's a little bit closer. So these are the holes that I was mentioning about the partial knit that I spoke about a little bit before. And I can rectify those just by wrapping the end needles if I wanted to. For this sample, I didn't bother. And that was just because it was just a sample to see what would happen rather than making it really clean and final. But I would probably do that for a final sample. So that is it for this video. Here is the original that I took the inspiration from, and then I just worked with it and tried something else to make it circular and to try and play with the structure a little bit more. Thank you so much for watching. I'm on Instagram, Patreon, and you can also follow me along here for more videos like this in the future.